happens when parents from one race adopt children from another? I'm Hayley Adams Fitzpatrick from The Voice of America with a special report about transracial adoption in the United States. Here in America, more than 130,000 children are adopted every year, and there are more African American children in foster care than there are black families to adopt them. And so many black children are adopted into white families. In this special report, VOA's Claire Morin-Gibourg takes a look at the challenges facing these children and their parents as they form new families. We begin in the state of New Mexico, where black Americans make up just 3% of the population. Megan Walsh directs La Familia Namaste, an adoption agency in Albuquerque, New Mexico. For 20 years, she has helped families welcome children into their homes, kids of all ages and races.
A lot of adoptive families struggle when they adopt transracially because they are maybe not so comfortable stepping outside their comfort zone. And I think it's really important for adoptive families to be able to realize that when they adopt transracially, they're asking their child to often be the minority even in their family.
Every year, La Familia finds families for roughly 80 children from birth to 17 years old. 1 in 3 of the agency's adoption placements are transracial, which means the kids do not share the same race as their adoptive family. For many parents, race is not an issue.
Starting out, I went through the foster care system to adopt, and they just say, we have a little boy, you know, this is his name, this is where he's at. And he was in the hospital, and so you go and you fall in love, and they're your child.
When they ask if the children are ours, and it's like, well, yeah, they are ours, because they were ours from day one, just about. Doesn't really matter where they came from, they're here now.
Transracial adoptions come with their own challenges. Some children realize early on that they are different from the rest of their family and their communities.
At 10, he's just starting to notice that people might be looking at us, that we don't look like every other family in town, that there aren't as many black children in our neighborhood.
Adopted children can often feel lonely or like outsiders, especially if they live in what they see as an all-white world.
The first thing that families need to do when they're raising a black child or a child of an ethnicity different than theirs is that they need to find professionals in their community that share ethnicity with their child.
Skincare or hair care is another challenge for white families who adopt black kids, particularly girls.
With most families, what I've found is that they start by coming in and asking about, hair. That's the initial referral. But the truth of the matter is that it's so much deeper than that. Self-esteem, of course, how a child feels being in a place like New Mexico where we have such a small population of people of African descent.
Sometimes I'll walk into a class and the first thing that comes to my mind is there another black person in this room that I can relate to or that looks similar to me? Because
it's interesting for moms, I think, and families to know that bit of hair culture, because
absolutely.
Hair is a socio-political issue
in
our culture. It'll help us
still is.
As white parents who have not experienced this to understand, even going deeper.
Learning to value everyone of every ethnicity and not to be afraid of what we don't know. I think that's what's really important. People that get really stuck on being colorblind, I feel like they're doing their kids a disservice because they're not teaching them that how they are is wonderful and how they came into this world is important and vital for everybody.
I do kind of look like you.
You do kind of look like me?
In Washington state, Chad Goller Sojourner grew up feeling uncomfortable in his own black skin. Despite the loving support of his adoptive parents, he said he felt isolated in a largely white community. But he's using that sense of alienation as a tool to build a healthy racial identity, both in coaching other transracial families and in his performance art. Chad Goller Sojourner was adopted at 13 months by a family in Tacoma in the northwestern U.S. state of Washington. His parents are white. He, his brother and sister are not. He felt a big disconnect between his white upbringing and how he felt perceived by others.
I was this black boy who didn't want to be black. From an identity standpoint, I identified with the people around me. You know, with transracial adoptees, your first identification is that of your surroundings.
Black people scared me. And since I wasn't a fan of being scared, I would do my best to avoid them at all times possible.
Chad's show makes it clear that he wasn't comfortable in exclusively white or black worlds. Now 46, he has turned that discomfort into performance art.
I would be shy of 25 before I could hear rap music and not think something bad was about to go down.
After years of grappling with identity issues and stigma, Chad decided to become a coach for transracial adoptive families.
I firmly believe that as transracial parents, that they have a duty to prepare their child not just for the world they live in, but most importantly for the world that they'll age into.
April and Andrew Rauch adopted 2 black children, Ophelia and Gwion, before getting pregnant with Henrique.
I thought that we were prepared to parent children of color, but I remember that the very first thing that really rocked our world was Trayvon Martin. Because I remember that photo that was released of him in his hoodie that looked so much like you. And we took you kids to the march here in Seattle. And that just rocked my world. That could have been you guys.
17-year-old Trayvon Martin was shot dead one evening in 2012 as he walked to his father's home in Central Florida. The shooter, a neighborhood watch captain, was acquitted of a second-degree murder charge. Trayvon's case sparked nationwide rallies for racial justice.
Are you worried about your brother?
Yeah. I just don't want him to get hurt because of the way he looks, because he's my brother.
Chad also wanted to know more about his biological family. A few years ago, he finally tracked down his birth mother's sister. She sent him a portfolio about his birth mom, Yolanda Maria Hurt. She was an actress and had died in 2011.
It was very interesting to see for the first time at 44 somebody who looked like me, and then to end up in the same profession as she did was just crazy, you know.
His birth mother's memorabilia helped Chad better understand his identity. Now, when counseling adoptive families, he emphasizes the need to preserve ties to a child's pre-adoption life.
A lot of people forget that adoptees have a story before they come to you. Whatever it is, that we have our own story. And this was my story. To know that I could run my fingers over here, and although she's deceased, I'm actually touching my mother, not metaphorically, but really. And so certainly that is something beyond what I ever thought possible.
Stephanie Poole teaches 4th grade in Washington state. Since adopting 3 black children, this white suburban mom has learned some important lessons about how race can affect expectations of a student's behavior and academic performance.
And one of my best friends came over to me and said, Timney just said she doesn't want to be a friend because you're black. That made me get mad and go walk out of class sometimes. And I would just go out of school and stuff.
So this is the behavior I was talking about. She would get punished for leaving class when class was an environment where kids were calling her out for the color of her skin.
Niara is the second of Stephanie Poole's 3 adopted children. The family lives in Seattle, Washington state. Stephanie teaches 4th grade at a suburban public school. Motherhood has taught her some hard lessons about how race can influence people's perceptions of a student's behavior or academic performance. She knows because she's seen it before with her son.
Yeah, Carter's already internalized that and said, I don't want to be black. And that's a horrible thing to hear your son say, that he doesn't want to be who he is, you know. By the end of kindergarten, they wanted to qualify him for social emotional, for special ed also.
Like Niara, Carter has an attention deficit disorder and trauma-related problems. A school district psychiatrist evaluated him and said he had tendencies to be violent, aggressive, and disruptive. Stephanie insisted those labels be removed from her son's specialized education plan.
I went right to the special ed department and said, I want these taken off, because this is literally the school to prison pipeline where we're talking about how can you list these descriptors of violent for a 6-year-old boy.
Nicholas ZILL is a research psychologist in Washington. He's the co-author of a study for the University of Virginia's Institute for Family Studies that focuses on the academic performance of adopted children. There's extensive research on the subject. It shows adopted children are more likely to have learning and behavioral issues than other students.
The thing that's striking is that with many, a large minority and even a majority of adopted children often have behavioral issues in the classroom, and they have some difficulty getting along with other children at a higher rate than biological children do. And that was consistent finding that we had in our research studies.
Studies also reveal that children adopted as babies are less likely to exhibit problems than those adopted as older kids. Some adopted children face another complication.
Generally speaking, black children do have somewhat higher rate of problems within the adoptive population as well as in the biological population. That does show up.
As a teacher and a mother, Stephanie knows some children struggle in school, but she sees the education system as a big part of the problem.
There's so many layers of, if you look at the curriculum, it's mostly white. If you look at books, they're mostly white. And all of these things just disenfranchise our kids of color year after year after year. And now having adopted black kids and having to pretty much fight for them so much to get them what they need in school has changed my lens completely.
Researcher Constance Lindsay says having a teacher of the same race can improve student outcomes. She was part of a team that analyzed the records of more than 100,000 black students in elementary and high schools. Those who had at least one black teacher had better results. Boys were significantly less likely to drop out of school, and both boys and girls were more likely to attend college. Lindsay says it's the role model effect.
If you're growing up in a home that doesn't have a college-educated black person and you're able to see one at school who's your teacher, that might signal to you that, hey, I can do this too. I actually have another study that shows that having a same-race teacher for black students decreases rates of discipline actions, and so you're less likely to get suspended or expelled if you have a black teacher, and so that might be related to how teachers think about misbehavior. So if you have a white teacher who isn't trained in cultural competency and how to work with diverse students, it might be harmful for students.
Zachary Morrison was adopted as a newborn by a white family in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He says he was often unfairly singled out at his overwhelmingly white high school.
I think everything that's happened to me at this school happened to me because I was black. A lot of people at this school had it out for me from the beginning. My principal was giving me a detention or something I didn't deserve. That made me angry. I did punch a wall, and I did break the bone in my hand.
He says his peers were often insensitive too. His mother remembers the day when the quarterback on ZACK'S school football team sent a troubling text.
He posted a picture of Zach going into the locker room after practice completely drenched, and it had been a hot day, and after practice, you know, they're all pretty sweaty, and it was a photo of him, and underneath it, it said, "This is Zach after a long day of picking cotton."
Zach's teammates laughed, and that upset him, though some of those same teammates helped elect Zach homecoming king in his junior year.
I believe that race was an issue for Zach when he was young, when he was a little boy. I think that it was especially difficult for him going to school and not having anyone that looked like him that he could reach out to.
He has been, from kindergarten through, the only Afro-American male in his entire class, all the way through.
It was hard. I think it affected me a little bit for a while, and then I think I just kind of got used to it.
Zach is now a third-year cadet at the Massachusetts Maritime Academy south of Boston. Of its 1,600 cadets, fewer than 10% come from racial or ethnic minority communities. Zach says this otherness has given him the incentive to accomplish his goals.
I think it motivated me more to prove people wrong and to show them that, you know, you may be hit with like a little speed bump early in life, but it doesn't mean that, you know, it's gonna turn your whole life around and you won't be able to succeed or be successful or be happy.
Stephanie hopes all her children will grow up to be strong, confident adults. She says they've flourished since moving from their Seattle neighborhood school to the Highline School District where she teaches, and where she says staff are trained to be sensitive to racial equity. Stephanie says even she needed to be sensitized.
I mean, the lessons I've learned as being a white mom and having black kids, how much institutionalized racism is in our school structure is absolutely phenomenal. And I never had to realize that before I had black kids. And yet this has been the truth for all black families as far back as we can remember. But because I'm white, I never had to look at that.
After the break, how a brutal police beating changed a young black man and his white adoptive parents. We'll bring you their journey towards social justice. Back in a moment.
Voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about, sharing stories of development and growth across Africa,
around the world, and in our lives.
Topics that inform, empower, and change the rules. It's time for Our Voices
with me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick,
and Hadiza Kiari, and Ayan Bior, and Orion Itangi Shaka. Join us on Facebook at VOA Our Voices.
It's time for Our Voices.
Welcome back to Denver, Colorado now, and a story that grabbed local headlines in 2009. A young black man beaten by police officers after he was pulled over for an alleged traffic violation. That man was Alex Landau, then 19 years old. The incident changed him and the white parents who had adopted him. The Landau family came to some important realizations about civil rights and their naivete in thinking they could protect their son from bias.
I was adopted when I was 2 days old.
We just wanted a baby that would be healthy, could be ours legally, and we didn't care about skin color.
I never really had the ability to distinguish my skin color and how my skin color was different from other folks around me, even my parents.
When you're Caucasian parents, you may go into it thinking on some level that you understand the concept of colorblindness. And superficially, we were terrific, but we didn't understand what it's like to be black in America, what it's like to grow up in a transracial family.
What did you want to do when you were a kid?
There was a time, actually, I wanted to be a police officer. And I was one for Halloween.
Alex Landau's attitude about police changed in January 2009. He was 19 and about to start a new semester at community college in Denver, Colorado. Late one evening, he and a friend decided to go get burgers. When police pulled over their car for an alleged illegal left turn, trouble escalated quickly.
I assumed being out of handcuffs that I could have an interaction with these law enforcement officers. I asked if I could see a warrant before they continued searching my car. However, these officers immediately became irate and began to punch me in the face.
I was like right in this area, facing underneath my car, and I could just feel the gun pressed to the side of my head. And then when I regained consciousness, they rolled me out by my ankles and dragged me across the grass, and then let me bleed on an officer's jacket until the paramedics arrived.
Alex was taken to hospital, but insisted on being photographed before receiving treatment.
And so after the photos were taken, I received 45 stitches. I was treated for a broken nose, diagnosed with a concussion, and later with a brain injury.
Alex spent 2 days in jail. When he was released, he and his father Steve rushed to the Denver Police Internal Affairs Bureau to file a complaint.
I just felt like it was turning into them trying to cover themselves up even at that point. I mean, I grew up as a son of a policeman, and I sort of know how they act.
Alex filed a civil lawsuit against the city, winning a settlement of nearly $800,000. The announcement came on his 21st birthday in May 2011. It took months for Alex to recover and start processing what had happened.
I'm a different person because of that night, and it totally changed the trajectory of my life.
Now 29, Alex does community outreach for the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. He also leads criminal justice workshops at high schools and his former college. Alex recounts how he was racially profiled by police and later won a settlement. But he makes this point.
Money has nothing to do with justice. You cannot ever put a number, a monetary number, on what your life is worth, what my life is worth.
His parents blame themselves for not being able to protect Alex. They wonder if they should have known more or done more. But Alex believes he would have faced the same risks if he was raised by African-American parents.
You both are my parents, you know, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Mr. Officer, I'm watching you. I'll take the badge off of you. Clobber you in court, and now the press wants to talk to you.
The last stop on our journey to uncover the challenges of transracial adoptions is Seattle, Washington. Angela Tucker says she felt incomplete growing up, even as part of a big family with other siblings, some of them black and adopted, like her. But all of that changed when she found her birth mother. Take a look.
Part of my life is like a mystery to me. One minute I was born and I was with one family, the next minute I was with a different one.
At 9 years old, Maggie has already thought deeply about her adoption and questions where she belongs. She is the middle child of Amy and Brett Bowton Mead. They have two biological daughters, Sophia, who is 16, and Julia, who is 8.
Adopting a child of color has another layer of complexity. I have felt like I can't do enough or be enough, or I'm not the right person for her. Like, what was I thinking? That I could do this? How could I be so arrogant to think I could, like, you know, fulfill this role for her?
Everyone is looking to figure out who they are. It's about one's identity. And I think for adopted kids, and particularly transracially adopted kids, they have to continually work through their stories.
Okay, so
when Maggie began to express questions about her identity, Brett and Amy looked for guidance. They met Angela Tucker, who works at Amara, the Seattle adoption agency where she directs post-adoption services. She made a documentary about searching for her own biological parents.
Finding my birth mom has helped me feel more whole. And then just seeing someone who looked just like me, my birth dad, that was crazy.
In 2010, Angela met both of her birth parents. She began to talk to and text them regularly. She tried to have deep conversations with Deborah, her birth mother.
To be with you is a joy. That's God's gift to me.
Though Angela's quest for her origins caused some anxiety for her adoptive mom, Teresa and her husband supported the search.
I felt like maybe meeting her birth mother would kind of replace me. But Angela's interest in it was so deep, became so deep, that it helped me realize how important it was.
Angela's quest was easier for David, her adoptive father.
I got the joy of raising her from 1 through college. I wasn't going to lose anything. I mean, you know, they're their own people. Children become their own people. And because someone else may come into their life as an important person and should, that doesn't have any impact on my relationships.
Yeah, I think the search has made her stronger. After doing it, she can help others and is helping others with their searches.
To learn more about transracial adoption, visit us online at voanews.com. Thank you for joining us for this special report from the Voice of America. I'm Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick in Washington. Goodbye.